All right. Officially, good morning, everyone. My name is Daniel L. Ayuba, and today I want to talk to us about programming, the very basics of programming. I call it Programming 101. In case you're wondering what programming is, how difficult it is, or is it difficult at all, don't worry, you're going to get that knowledge very soon. So before we proceed, we want to look at the agenda of what we have today. We're going to be talking about some introduction to basic programming, what is a program, who is a programmer, and what is a programming language. And hopefully we're going to conclude on the topic of introduction to programming. And by the end of this talk, I hope that all of us are going to become programmers. Are you happy? Well, I'm very happy to see how you guys learn how to write program. Yes, so first is introduction to programming. So what is exactly programming? Programming is the art and science of making computers do as we command them to do. So what is the key point there? Command. We give these computers command. We tell them our minds, what we're thinking about, and we ask these computers to help us do these tasks, right? So, but this is a very huge topic, and I'm going to unravel it as we progress. There are so many keywords that are components of this programming in itself. So we are going to proceed by talking about what is a program in its own sense. So this program is actually a set of commands that we give to the computer. And this set of commands are actually called instructions because this is exactly what the computer follows to carry out its own tasks. And these programs are stored in the computer memory. Well, because of today's advancement in technology, the program can be stored elsewhere over the network. But the most important thing is the computer follows this set of instructions to carry out its tasks. So to the right of the screen, for example, is a very simple program. You might call it a very simple or elementary calculator that is only good at summing numbers. So, for example, the computer starts and you tell the computer, hey, read in the first number. In this case, you can see that the first number is 529. And they say, read in the second number, or you ask somebody who is the user to type the second number, which is 256. And then once you do that, automatically the computer will compute the sum of 529 plus 256, and then it prints on the screen for you the result, which is 785. So if you use your calculator today, this is typically what is happening under the hood of your calculator. Isn't this fun? Let's proceed. Who is a programmer? In case you're asking, programmer is actually the creator. This is someone who writes this code to create the computer programs. They are the people that transform their ideas into our own reality. So sometimes you will see this word interchangeably. They call them programmers or they call them coders, right? But there is a missing link between program and programmer, right? We're going to find that in the next slide, which is programming language. So the programming language, which is one of the most interesting part, is actually the communication. So the programmer needs a way to communicate to the computer so that the computer can carry out the tasks that the programmer is asking the computer to do, right? So again, that is the communication. You can think of this programming language as conventional languages that humans use. For example, I'm communicating to you using English, right? If you don't understand English, then you wouldn't understand what I am saying. So the computer needs to has its own language that it understands, and then the programmer needs to talk to the computer in that language that the computer understands. There are other languages that this computer understands. We call them high-level languages. To the right of the screen, you see this picture. These are names of programming languages. Like, for example, you have PHP, you have Java, you have Python. You have so many languages that the computer understands. And these programmers are experts in speaking these languages. That is how they communicate to the computer. So let's go back to talk about exactly wholesome what this programming is. So again, the programming is the process, right? Remember, we spoke about the program itself, we spoke about the programmer, and now we're talking about the programming, which is what? The process, the actual act of writing, testing, and maintaining your program, or in some cases, you hear them called code, right? And the process of doing this, again, is also called coding. So in some literatures, you might see coding or you see programming. Don't get confused. They mean the same thing, right? So quickly to the right, we're going to see the development life cycle of writing a program. So first and foremost, you define some set of problems that you want to solve, because programmers are problem solvers. So you guys are all problem solvers, but today you're going to learn, or you're going to start using the sense you get from programming to use it as a tool to solve your problems. So when you define the problems that you want to solve, for example, earlier we have a problem of adding two numbers. How do we add two numbers, right? Then we'll jump to the next stage of the problem analysis. When we're doing this problem analysis, this is where we say, what do we need to be able to solve this particular problem? To add two numbers, we probably need those numbers. What are those numbers? What particular numbers do we want to add? How do we actually do the adding? This is problem analysis, right? So you move on to the next stage, which is called algorithm development. Algorithm in its own sense is just the step-by-steps that you need to take to solve a particular problem. For example, if you are hungry today, what are the steps that you need to get yourself filled? You need to go and cook, or go to your kitchen, do one or two things. I'm not a chef, but understand what I mean. Just the steps that you need to take to achieve a particular solution or get a particular result. So once you've itemized and ordered these steps, remember I say step by step from beginning to the end, so that another programmer like yourself can come and repeat those steps, and hopefully they will get the same result like yourself, right? After this algorithm development, this is now the stage for us to actually write this code and save them as a program in the computer memory. So that process is called coding. And while you're doing that, you're documenting the steps, all the things that you did, so that it can be reproducible, right? So after coding, the glorious time of testing comes. You want to test and see whether what you've asked the computer to do, the computer is actually doing that thing. We don't want to tell the computer sum two numbers, and at the end of the day, the computer is actually subtracting those numbers. So that is the computer doing something that we didn't ask it to do, right? So if we discover that the computer is doing what we didn't ask it to do, there's a process called debugging. So that process is actually correcting the computer so that the computer will start doing exactly what we ask it to do, right? So once we are happy that the computer is not doing what we want the computer to do, we move on to the stage of maintenance. We keep on monitoring whether this computer is doing exactly what we wanted to do and is still serving its purpose. So those are the steps involved in programming. I'd like to conclude this session by telling you all that programming or coding is actually very easy. And remember, I mentioned programming languages are like human languages. You can think of them like the languages we speak: English, Spanish, French, to communicate to one another, the same way we use programming languages to communicate between programmers and computers. Anyone, including yourself, can actually learn to program. I tell you, programming is fun, and now it's time for you to begin to unleash your creativity. Thank you very much. And now we come to the time where you ask me questions. So I'll pause a little for you to ask questions. Do we have anybody with questions?
Yeah, I'm happy to ask maybe if you have any preferences for the languages of programming yourself.
Yes, I have preference myself for today. On the top of my stack, the most language I use is called Python because it's very, very friendly. It looks more like English that we speak. Any beginner can just easily look at Python programming language and understand from just looking at it what it is trying to achieve. So Python is almost the go-to language as of today. So for beginners, I will advise you to start with Python programming language.
Great, thank you.
You're most welcome. Any other question?